Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Rashida Fuselier-Franklin. Um, I decided that I wanted to share my story today because I've had so many different experiences in my life, and God has been speaking to me lately about sharing my story. Some of it can be really uncomfortable, and it's so funny that last night, um, as I went to bed late last night, I was speaking with my cousin. We had a beautiful time speaking with each other. And when I got off the phone, I noticed I couldn't sleep. It was like I was tossing and turning, tossing and turning. I didn't go to bed until really late, and I was asking God what is going on. And the fact that I was encouraged to get up and pray, but the other part of what I heard was that God is calling us to be uncomfortable. And that was what was happening with me last night. I went on the bed, I slept on the floor. I could not get comfortable. And he just allowed me to understand the place where we as the body of believers are in is an uncomfortable place. So some of my story is going to be a bit uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable for me to say certain things about my past, but every time I share, I realize that I touch many people. Many people tell me of how my story has just touched them. So just to let you know a little bit about myself, I'm Rashida Fuselier-Franklin. I live in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Um, I'm actually at this time evacuated because, of course, if you've heard of Lake Charles, you've heard that they were severely impacted by Hurricane Laura. And just I want you guys to continue to keep Lake Charles in prayer. They've really been through a lot, and it's going to take a while before we get back to what's considered normal, which we probably won't ever be fully back to what they call normal. I'll just let you know a bit about me. I am born in Nassau, Bahamas, and I grew up in Freeport until I moved to the U.S. I was about 18. But my background and story started when I was a young child. The first incident that I recall, and it was really tragic at that time, was the time that I actually was molested and raped in elementary school um, by the headmaster or the owner. We call him headmaster, but he was actually the owner of the school. And many people may not know, because in the Bahamas at that time, really it was a it was a case that was well known. It was the first publicized case, and I remember the traumatization of that because I was to be one of the little girls to testify. And I remember the being in the courtyard and waiting to testify, and another young girl went ahead of me, and she testified, and they didn't end up needing my testimony, because after what she said, the judge uh, deliberated, and it was like a madhouse. But I do remember the feeling of utter fear. I was petrified. First, I was petrified because I was one of the children that told, and I was petrified because I was watching the people surrounding and how angry they were, and how they were threatening to kill him. And I mean, it was total chaos. And for a 4 or 5 year old, I'm not exactly sure, because sometimes I forget the age that I was. Maybe no, maybe about 5. And 5 or 6 maybe. I'm not exactly sure. Roughly around that age. I was really little. For a child of that age to see this, it was traumatizing to me. I mean, extremely traumatizing. And I was always so fearful and afraid, and like I said, to just watch all of the adults. I don't remember where my dad was. My mom and dad were separated, and my mom lived in another city, and I was being raised by my dad. And my dad was there somewhere, but I remember just feeling utter fear. I think it catapulted my life from that stage on to a place of just fear. I always was afraid of everything. And I remember having such nightmares for a long time about the gentleman, the man coming back to get me for telling. And I remember the young lady that told the story of what happened to us, because it was her story that actually caused him to go to jail. And we didn't see each other for years, and I happened to see her when I went to visit some family members of mine, and she went to the same school. And my cousins, they were just talking so ill about this young lady. They were just speaking so badly of her and her reputation and how she slept around and promiscuous. And I remember being so angry when they spoke about her, because I identified with her. What they didn't know were that we were the children that of that at that time high profile case, because if I recall, many of the children weren't known to the public on the whole. Our names weren't put in the newspaper or whatever. We were known. So when I saw her, and I did recognize her after all those years, because when I saw her again, we were in high school. They were in high school, and I think I was visiting my cousins in Nassau and saw her, and they spoke so badly about her. And I remember screaming at them and just fussing at them, because I was angry, because I looked at them and it's like, you don't know her story. See, I understood and I knew what she went through. And the thing that I look back, I remember as a child, when this incident happened, we didn't talk about it. My dad didn't even tell my mother of what happened. Well, he did mention to her that it was our school and this, because of course it got all around the nation, and it was such a big high profile case. And he assured her that I wasn't one of the little girls, and which I don't really know what was going on with that at the time. And maybe he didn't want my mom to know, to upset her, etc. But we just didn't talk about it. And there was no, at that time we didn't have go to a psychiatric and be evaluated and talk about all of this. We just didn't. You just swept it under the rug, and then you act as though it never happened. And that was, I mean, when I said it was very traumatizing, it was the beginning of my life, of the different things that happened in my life, and like a spiraling downward into a deep hole. And I didn't realize until I became an adult and went through a process of deliverance that had such a hold and a tight grip, and it affected me so. But getting back to looking back at that young lady, and we've never stayed in contact. We just happened to look at each other at that time, and I defended her when they were talking about her behind her back, and because they didn't know her story. And I just felt like she were me and I was her, being in that same position, because I was promiscuous. And a lot of people spoke about me, and even to a point of one gentleman mentioning when he heard I got saved, that I wasn't going to stay saved because I was too promiscuous. I love sex too much, is what he said to other people. So I identified with her. But as a child growing up, I didn't realize that from that incident that I had developed what they call dual personalities. And it took me having to see this when I heard a pastor speak recently, and he was speaking about a young man in the Bible, and how he was filled with demons, and he went to Jesus, and he wanted Jesus to deliver his son, and he had such a profound message, and he and the child was mute, I guess, and but when he asked a question about the young man being made silent, he provoked a thought of why was he made silent? What was behind the scene? And when I look back at my own life, I think on the silence that we kept because we didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about that school. We didn't talk about what happened to me. I didn't have anybody that I could speak with. So I held that inside, and I was a petrified child, just afraid of everything. And as I got older, I overcame my fear. But how I did that was I pretended that anything bad that happened, it happened to the other me and not the real me. So then as I look back and I realized later that my silence and keeping my silence and keeping everything in, I developed a split type of personality. And I realized that anything negative and anything bad that happened to me, I would look and say, it was the bad her. It was the other Rashida. It's not the real Rashida. It was the other girl. And it was the trauma of it. I just didn't realize. Like I said, I didn't realize. And I didn't realize that all of these were things that Jesus, it was like he was peeling back layers of things, because there was a second rape. And then there was a third rape. I was 14 when I was raped again I was going to high school, and my mom went to, she was taking up a course, and she sent us to live with my dad. And I ended up living in Clear Lake. And I was living with a lady, one of my dad's close friends, and she had an elderly nephew, and that was the second incident I was raped by him. And he had gotten drunk and came in the bed one night and silenced me. And that was part of, I had already knew how to play the role really well, because I knew how to keep my mouth shut, and I was silenced. And then the third time I was raped, I was 17, and I was raped by a friend, her boyfriend, a very good friend of mine, and I was raped by her boyfriend, and I was brutally and violently raped by him. And when I think back on that, that was another place that I was silenced. I became silent. But in my silence, I would revert to, it didn't happen to the real me. It happened to her, the bad her. So then I began to act out and aggressive and promiscuous and all of that, because see, that was the other Rashida. That wasn't the real me. And looking back at that process in my life, I realized that it as like that demoniac young man, that Jesus, when Jesus came and set him free, and you would have to read the story. It was in Mark 9, I think. It spoke about the story of the young man, and he was mute. He was silenced. He was silenced by all the trauma, whatever the trauma might have been in his life. And it just reminded me of myself, of all the trauma, the different rapes that I've gone through, because I didn't have self-worth and didn't love myself. Then I got involved with a young man that I fell madly in love with. I thought, a young teenage girl, you know how that is. And I fell madly in love with him. But he was abusive. And he and I fought all the time, but he was really abusive. He beat me a lot. And when I look back at the areas of my life, of all the things that I went through, and bad relationships and bad choices that I made, and I look back at that, I'm so grateful and thankful for Jesus coming in. He peeled back all those layers, and he took me through the process and delivered me from what I call a lifestyle of like schizophrenia. And because I remember getting married with my first husband, he would say you bipolar. And what it was is that I would be one way one minute and flip another. And it was like I was hearing voices speaking to me and going through this whole traumatic episode. But I realized that it was a process of my deliverance. And the part of my testimony is that at the age of 17, when I was raped the last time, and I didn't tell anybody, just a few friends knew, and I shared uh, that with a few of my friends. But I never shared it outside of that. I didn't tell any police. I didn't tell anybody because at the time in the Bahamas, where when I grew up, if you told about being raped, you were almost you were at a disadvantage, because if your reputation wasn't sparkling or spotless, it turned around on the woman, turned around, because it's his word against hers, etc. And I just did not want to go through that. So again, I shut myself, and I looked at it and I blamed her. When I was a young child, after the incident at 4 and 5 years old, I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I'd become addicted to pornography. I was probably 8 or 9 when I would go under my dad's mattress and see the little books and little X-rated books, and I was just addicted to looking at that stuff, because I was opened to this world. I was open to this demonic world. I was open to this world of being oppressed and being and it was like spirits was living in me, because I had been open to all this trauma. And the way I dealt with it is I allowed myself to walk in a place of I'm not her, but this is the other me. And when I look back at all of that, now that I see it and I look back, I'm just in awe of what God has done. And this is, of course, this is a part of my testimony. So many stories that I've told on Facebook, and I've told and shared my testimony, and this is just the beginning. But this particular part I wanted to share because I wanted to speak to other people that's been silenced. You don't have a voice. See, Jesus had to come in. I was 18 after I was 17 when that incident, the last rape happened, and the brutal rape. And I began drinking. I went out partying. I become more promiscuous. I would go be with one guy and go with another guy and dump him, and go with somebody else, because I felt like I'm going to take control and I'm not going to let anybody hurt me and hurt that other girl. And then she would act out, and it was just chaotic until Jesus came and saved me. When Jesus came, when my younger brother at the time came and witnessed to me, I recall that night, and he was telling me a story about a young lady whose father, and I might have shared this before, whose father was against her being around and affiliated with this, he called them fanatical group, or the Christian group. And he would constantly get on her because she had gotten saved, and he'd constantly just just insult her and constantly tear her down about being a part of them and affiliated with this Christian group. And I guess she had gotten tired of having her father continuously doing that, so she gave up on it, and she gave up on her faith. She gave up on Jesus, and she had stopped going to church and everything. And I think she'd gotten sick, and when she'd gotten sick, she was in the hospital, and she started to die. And as she was dying, she was screaming at her dad how the fires were crawling up from her knees to her thighs and up to her torso. And she just began to scream. And her dad, by this time, he was just mortified. And he just told her to call on the name of Jesus and call it. She looked at him and she said, I don't believe in that anymore. Something to that aspect that she had mentioned. And she went out of the world screaming. And they said that dad had walked around like a living zombie ever since his daughter died, because he had blamed himself of of her turning her back on Jesus and not being saved, and he witnessed her going to hell. That story, I can't even tell you how much of an impact that had on me. And at that time, I didn't realize that I was watching my younger brother when he was saved. And back then, he was about 14. I think I was 18 at the time. And I was watching him, and I was watching his lifestyle at that time. And he was just so bold about his faith, and I was just admiring. And my question was, when I would watch him, because I would just be just like lurking in the lurking around in the dark, or hiding to the side whenever I heard him speaking or ministering to somebody or witnessing. And I remember one day thinking, why he never came to me to tell me about Jesus? Why would he never, whatever they called that at the time, I didn't even realize it was called witnessing. Why didn't he come and tell me? Am I that bad and that dirty? Am I that far gone that even God doesn't want me? And it's funny that when I thought of this and I said this, the day he told me about that story, then he began to ask me about my soul. So, and see, what God was doing was developing, which I didn't know, a hunger for him at the time. See, many are called, but few are chosen. God chose me, and he called me in, and he knew how to get me too. And when he told me that story, I remember sitting there, and I was fixing my hair for work the next day, because I graduated, and I started working at an attorney's office. And when I heard what he said and he told the story, it shook me. I'll never forget. That was the first time I'd ever felt the way I felt. I didn't know what to do with myself. And his question to me, when he asked at the end of his speech and telling me about the young lady and her father that was around walking like a living zombie, and he asked me, so if you were to die today, where would your soul be? And I looked at him, and I couldn't even answer, and it just came out of my mouth. I just spewed it. I said, to hell. And I couldn't even believe I said it, because I was like, wait a minute, did I just say I was going to go to hell? But at the time, that was the lifestyle I was living, and I knew at that time that I was not right. And so I remember saying, to hell. And when I said it, I walked out of the room and walked away from my brother, because I didn't want him to see that he had affected me. And I remember going to the room, and I didn't know going to my bedroom, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I was mortified because the thought of, I was saying, did I just say I was going to go to hell? And I did. But it was like a torture and torment to me. And I remember saying, because I was in such turmoil, I just went on my knees, and I just said, that I started to say the Hail Mary. That just didn't seem like it was what I needed. It didn't seem right, because I was Catholic, and I went to a Baptist church. I was eclectic. I went to a different bunch of very many different ministries in my lifetime. But at that time, we would go and visit my mother's Baptist church, but I was actually a Catholic. We were raised in Catholic schools, and we went to mass, etc. So when I'm sitting there, I'm thinking that, okay, I could say the Hail Mary. That didn't seem like it. Then I said the Our Father. That didn't seem like it was doing anything. And the only thing I remember saying, God, if you're really real, come into my heart. And when I said that, when I woke up the next morning, I felt like a totally different person. I remember going in the back of my closet and trying to find the plainest dress, because at the time I would dress really seductively. I really seductively. And I would go to work in some of the skimpiest stuff and etc. But that day, I just didn't feel like, I just felt clean for the first time in my life. For the first time in my life, I tell this story of the caption on my book of a little girl and the flowers dying under her, of how I used to always love flowers and everything seemed so bright, and flowers seem so bright and trees seem so beautiful. And the day that the um, molestation happened at my fragile age of 4 or 5, I didn't see, it was like everything got gray, everything was dark, nothing was bright anymore. And when the day that I said that prayer, that day when I got up and I put on that simple plain dress that I had at the back of my closet, when I put that dress on and I walked out the door and I felt so clean, that was the day that God had restored my eyesight. When I was 4 years old, how everything was so bright and clear, and I was so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And that day, for the first time since I was a little girl, everything was so bright. The sun was bright, the leaves were extra green, the little bees and animals, the things that were, the little bugs that was around was so much brighter, the flowers were brighter, everything just, it was so much brighter. And I wasn't even sure I was saved. I didn't even know what I was feeling. I just knew something happened to me and something different. And later on that evening when I got home, I told my brother and his friends that were Christians and they were church friends, and I told them how I felt and how I felt like I think I was saved. I think I want to be saved is what I said. And they led me through the sinner's prayers just to make sure. But I already knew something was different, because when I went to work that day, everything was bright. Everything was beautiful. It was like someone took the scales off of my eyes and I was able to see everything was so bright. And I share this today just to let you know what Jesus can do for your life. He took the darkness of my life. He took the place where I had become more than one person. It was like I was going through schizophrenia or multiple personalities, that I didn't even realize that that was a part of my story until I heard the pastor preach this past Sunday, and I realized this is another part of my story, that the revelation, because I always looked at my salvation and I got saved and I rejoiced in it, but when I realized the depth of what Jesus did for me when he died on Calvary, and he died to set me free, to set the little girl in me free. For the first time in my life at 18 years old, from the age of 4 to 18, I saw everything dark. Everything was gray. Nothing was the same. My outlook was sad and depressed. And I've gone through many other things in my lifetime, but Jesus has been the ultimate of everything for me. He has set me free. He's renewed my mind. He's blessed me. He's kept me. He's given me a new mind, a new heart to love people. Even the young man, when I was 17, that had maliciously raped me and brutally raped me, when I saw him, one day I had to tell him I forgive him. And I ended up moving on from all the different rapes and all the different mistreatment to forgiving. That is what Jesus gave to me. He took the scales off my eyes and he set me free. And I share this story to let you know that he wants to take the scales off your eyes and set you free. He wants to deliver you from the multiple personalities. He wants to set you free from the abuse and the turmoil and everything that you've gone through. I tell my story not for anyone to feel sad, but for anyone that hears it to rejoice of what God can do for you, what he has done for me, he can do for you. So I just want to share, I just wanted to share that testimony. I just wanted to share a little bit of myself and who I am with you, because I know that God has called me to tell my story. I wrote it in a book. I wrote so much of the depth of my life in a book, and it wasn't easy. And some people even judge me for doing that. Why would you want to say that much? Why would you want to tell all of that? But I realized that my life is no longer my own. That when I gave my life to Christ, I no longer belong to myself. I now belong to him. And the joy that I feel, the joy that I felt, the love and compassion is so overwhelming. The only person that could do that for you is Jesus. And I would admonish you to give your life to him today, because time is really wrapping up. If we look at the signs of the time, we'd realize that everything is wrapping up. It's really short. Life is short. But I just plead with you to just get to know him. Get to know him as your Savior and your Lord and King. He will never fail you. He has never failed me. So just wanted to share that, and I want you to know that I love you, and I would like to ask you to subscribe to my channel. I'm going to start putting up other videos of different testimonies and different things that I've gone through, visions and dreams, and I have a few videos that I've shared in the past, and I've talked about different things and shared different things that God has given me. But that's part of my channel now, that I just want to share my life story with someone, with anyone that would hear it, to let you know that Jesus is the answer for this world today. He is the answer. I love you. Goodbye.